Judgment Day is coming. Are you ready for it? Imagine it as a final exam at the end of a semester. Wouldn't you rather know what you'll be tested on instead of walking into that fateful day unprepared? Jesus spoke about Judgment Day multiple times, emphasizing that everyone, both the living and the dead, will stand before him and give an account of their lives. At the heart of this day of reckoning is one crucial question. What did we do with Jesus, the Son of God? Did we accept him, believe in him, and live humbly under his authority? Or did we reject him, ignore him, and live as if he didn't exist? But that's not all we'll be judged for on Judgment Day. The Bible tells us we'll have to account for our entire lives. This is where many well-meaning Christians can get confused, projecting their own priorities onto God and assuming that what's important to them is also important to God. Equally dangerous is assuming that what's emphasized in our church is what matters most to God. Judgment Day is so critical for Christians that the Bible provides clear guidance on what we will and will not be judged for. Consider it the ultimate final exam, and God has already given us the study guide. Here are 4 surprising things you will and will not be judged for on Judgment Day. 1. You won't be judged for your intentions. One of the biggest traps Christians fall into is believing that their good intentions are enough. We might not always obey God as we should, but we comfort ourselves by thinking that if we at least intend to obey him, that counts for something. Jesus addressed this in the parable of the 2 sons in Matthew 21. What do you think? There was a man who had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work today in the vineyard." "I will not," he answered. But later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. He answered, "I will, sir." But he did not go. Which of the 2 did what his father wanted? "The first," they answered. Matthew 21:28-31. In this story, the son who initially refused but later obeyed his father is the one who did what was right. On Judgment Day, we won't be judged on our intentions. We'll be judged on our actions. It's not enough to say we intend to follow God. We actually have to do it. 2. You won't be judged for how much you attended church. This one can be tricky because many churches emphasize regular attendance as a measure of devotion. For some, just showing up on Sunday is seen as fulfilling their Christian duty. But when Jesus talked about the church, he wasn't referring to a building or a weekly event. In Matthew 16-18, Jesus said to Peter, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." The Greek word for church here means assembly or gathering. It's about the people, not the place. Church isn't something you attend, it's something you live. On Judgment Day, you won't be judged on how many church services you attended, but on how you lived out Jesus' commands in your everyday life. 3. You will be judged for how you developed your potential. When the disciples asked Jesus about the end times and the coming judgment, he told them 2 parables. The first is known as the parable of the talents, or the parable of the bags of gold. Matthew 25:14-30. In this story, a master goes on a long journey and entrusts his servants with different sums of money. When he returns, alluding to Judgment Day, he holds his servants accountable for what they did with what they were given. The first 2 servants doubled their investments and were praised for their efforts, despite having been given different amounts. The third servant, however, hid his money out of fear and did nothing with it. He was condemned not because he lost the money, but because he failed to use what he was given. Too often, we compare ourselves to others and lament the gifts or opportunities we lack. But on Judgment Day, you won't be judged on someone else's potential. You'll be judged on how you developed your own. Whether you've been given much or little, what matters is what you do with it. 4. You will be judged for how you cared for others. The second parable Jesus told about Judgment Day is the parable of the sheep and the goats. Matthew 25:31-46. In this story, the king, representing Jesus, separates the people as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. His criteria for judgment is surprising. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Matthew 25:34-36. The people are surprised by this, and the king replies, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. This judgment is surprising because it challenges the way many Christians think today. We know the greatest commandment is to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But Jesus also emphasized that loving others is equally important. On Judgment Day, you'll be judged not just on your love for God, but on how you express that love by caring for others. Jesus warned that Judgment Day would come at a time when we least expect it. It's like a final exam that could appear as a pop quiz without warning. That's why Jesus took such care to teach us how to pass this ultimate test. Don't just intend to obey God, actually do it. Don't just attend church, be the church. Don't focus on someone else's gifts, develop your own. And most importantly, love God by loving His people. It's up to us to prepare and do our part to pass the test.